The invasion. The Galactian armada emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, their crystalline ships refracting sunlight into 1,000 deadly rainbows. Commander Vexnar stood at the bridge of the flagship Inevitable Dominance, his four eyes narrowed as he studied the blue-green planet suspended against the void. Earth. The name itself had become something of a legend among the spacefaring races, a world so savagely hostile that 3 previous invasion attempts by other species had ended in complete annihilation. "Status report," Vexnar demanded, his translator implant converting his natural clicks and whistles into standardized galactic common. Sub-Commander Razik approached, her exoskeleton gleaming under the ship's ambient lighting. "All 12,000 ships in position, Commander. Invasion protocols initiated. First wave ready for atmospheric entry." Vexnar's secondary arms twitched with anticipation. The High Council had entrusted him with 50 million of their finest warriors for this campaign. The Galactians had conquered 17 systems in the last solar cycle, each victory more decisive than the last. Their technology was unmatched, their tactical superiority proven repeatedly. "Begin the descent," he ordered. "Remember, this planet's natural defenses are its primary weapon. The indigenous bipeds are technologically primitive but seemingly well adapted to their lethal environment. We will not underestimate them as our predecessors did." On the tactical display, the first wave of 3,000 ships began their controlled descent through Earth's atmosphere. Vexnar watched dispassionately as atmospheric friction caused their hulls to glow red-hot. Standard procedure. Nothing to concern him until the anomalies began. "Commander?" Razik's voice took on an unusual pitch. "We're detecting massive atmospheric composition changes near our entry vectors." Vexnar watched in growing alarm as several ships suddenly veered off, course their trajectories becoming erratic. "What's happening?" "Unknown, sir. Atmospheric density appears to be fluctuating wildly. It's almost as if—" Razik paused, mandibles clicking in surprise. "As if the atmosphere itself is responding to our presence." On the tactical display, 12 ships simultaneously disappeared, their signals vanishing without the usual indicators of destruction. No explosion, no debris field. Simply gone. "Impossible," Vexnar muttered. The Galactian scientific community had assured him that Earth's reported defensive capabilities were exaggerated, stories spread by the survivors of failed invasions to explain their incompetence. Yet the evidence before him suggested otherwise. "Adjust entry vectors," he commanded. "Activate adaptive shielding. Whatever these atmospheric anomalies are, they won't stop us." Within 20 minutes, the first wave had completed atmospheric entry, or what remained of it. 217 ships had vanished during descent, their fate unknown. The rest deployed their drop pods as planned, releasing millions of Galactian warriors across Earth's surface. Vexnar selected his elite unit, the Void Cutters, for his personal command. Their drop pod crashed through the canopy of a dense forest, somewhere in the region the natives called Pacific Northwest. As the doors hissed open, Vexnar led his 20 elite warriors into their first contact with Earth's environment. The sensory assault was immediate and overwhelming. The atmosphere, which their probes had indicated was breathable with their standard filtration implants, burned in Vexnar's respiratory chambers. Every breath felt like inhaling microscopic shards of glass. Around him, several warriors staggered, their exoskeletons already showing signs of corrosion from mere minutes of exposure. "Adjust your atmospheric filters," he commanded, increasing his own filtration to maximum. "Deploy environmental monitors." Lieutenant Krastar, his most trusted subordinate, activated a portable scanner. "Commander, these readings make no sense. The atmospheric composition is shifting continuously. Oxygen levels are fluctuating between 18% and 26% within our immediate vicinity. It's as if the air itself is testing us." Vexnar dismissed the fanciful notion. "It's an atmospheric anomaly, nothing more. Establish the forward command post. I want defensive perimeters established before nightfall." But as his warriors began unpacking their equipment, another disturbing phenomenon manifested. The forest floor beneath them began to sink, almost imperceptibly at first, then with increasing speed. Quicksand? Lieutenant Krasitar suggested, retreating to a seemingly solid patch of ground. Impossible, Vexnar replied. Our geological surveys showed solid bedrock throughout this region. Yet the evidence was undeniable. The ground beneath them had transformed from solid earth to a semi-liquid state that threatened to engulf their equipment. More disturbingly, this transformation appeared selective, affecting only the areas where Galatian technology touched the soil. Before Vexnar could issue new orders, his communication implant chimed with incoming reports from other landing zones. What he heard chilled his hemolymph. Across the planet, Galatian forces were encountering impossible environmental resistance. In desert regions, sudden sandstorms materialized without warning, stripping the protective coatings from combat vehicles in minutes. In polar regions, ice sheets that had remained stable for millennia were suddenly fracturing, swallowing entire battalions. In tropical zones, plant life exhibited unprecedented growth rates, entangling and immobilizing warriors within hours of landing. Commander, Krasitar's voice pulled him back to their immediate situation. Movement detected. Approximately 2 kilometers north. Multiple signatures. Finally, Vexnar thought. The indigenous resistance. Something tangible they could fight. Prepare for combat, he ordered. Standard extinction protocols. The void cutters moved through the forest with practiced precision, their adaptive camouflage blending with the surrounding vegetation. As they approached the source of the movement, Vexnar felt something he rarely experienced: uncertainty. The humans came without warning. Unlike the primitive tribal warriors their intelligence suggested, these were disciplined soldiers, using sophisticated guerrilla tactics. They struck from multiple directions simultaneously, using the forest's natural features with intimate familiarity. More disturbing was their weaponry. Instead of the predicted chemically propelled projectiles, they wielded devices that seemed calibrated specifically against Galatian physiology. Sonic pulses that resonated painfully within exoskeletal chambers. Chemical agents that hardened the joints of their armor. Electromagnetic pulses precisely tuned to disrupt their neural implants. How could they have prepared so specifically for us? Krasitar shouted over the cacophony of battle. We've never encountered their species before. Vexnar had no answer. The humans' tactics were too precise, their countermeasures too perfect. It was as if they had been studying Galatian weaknesses for centuries. The battle lasted 17 minutes. When it ended, only Vexnar and 3 of his warriors remained functional. The rest lay immobilized or dead, their exoskeletons breached by weapons that shouldn't exist on such a technologically backward world. Retreat to the drop pod, Vexnar ordered. We need to regroup with the main invasion force. But as they turned back, they discovered their path blocked by a wall of vegetation that hadn't been there minutes before. Massive trees, their trunks intertwined, formed an impenetrable barrier. And beyond the strange foliage, Vexnar could hear the humans regrouping, their communication devices emitting bursts of encoded static. Find another route, he commanded, his confidence wavering for the first time. For 3 hours, they attempted to navigate back to their landing zone. Each path they chose somehow led them deeper into the forest. Landmarks they passed appeared to move when they weren't looking directly at them. The very geography of the land seemed to be reconfiguring itself around them. When Vexnar finally managed to establish communication with the orbiting fleet, the reports were catastrophic. Across the planet, Galatian forces were being systematically isolated and eliminated, not by overwhelming human military response but by the planet itself. The environment was the weapon, manipulated with impossible precision against the invaders. The High Command is ordering a full retreat, Sub-Commander Razik's voice crackled through his implant. We've lost contact with 60% of our ground forces. Extraction ships are being deployed, but... Her voice faltered. They're encountering the same atmospheric anomalies as during entry. We're losing vessels faster than we can launch them. The connection terminated abruptly. When Vexnar tried to re-establish it, he received only static. Night fell over the forest with unnatural swiftness. The ambient temperature plummeted, dropping well below the tolerance threshold of their environmental systems. Ice began forming on their exoskeletons, starting at the joints and spreading outward. One of the surviving warriors collapsed, his systems failing as the cold penetrated his core. "This planet is alive," the second warrior whispered, his voice distorted by his failing translator. "Not just with life. The planet itself. It's conscious. It's fighting us." "Superstitious nonsense," Vexnar snapped, but his rebuke lacked conviction. A sudden explosion illuminated the night sky. Through gaps in the forest canopy, Vexnar watched as the massive silhouette of the inevitable dominance broke apart, secondary explosions rippling along its length as it descended toward the planet's surface. The flagship, his flagship, destroyed. The third warrior fell silent beside him, her systems shutting down as the environmental assault overwhelmed her defenses. Vexnar and his remaining subordinate pressed on through the increasingly hostile forest. "Commander," the warrior's voice was faint. "My scanners are detecting a structure ahead. Artificial, possibly human." Vexnar adjusted his failing vision enhancement. Through the trees, he could make out the outline of a small structure, primitive but solid. A potential shelter. "We'll secure it," he decided. "Establish a defensive position and await extraction." But as they approached the building, the ground beneath them finally gave way completely. What had been solid forest floor transformed instantly into a liquid morass that engulfed them to their thoracic segments. The more they struggled, the faster they sank. "Commander!" The warrior reached for him, panic evident even through his failing translator. Vexnar watched helplessly as his last soldier disappeared beneath the surface, leaving not even a ripple to mark his passing. Alone now, Vexnar ceased his struggle, recognizing its futility. The liquid earth held him suspended, neither allowing him to escape nor pulling him under completely. A message, a deliberate action. Through his partially functional scanner, he detected movement approaching from the direction of the structure. A single human figure walking calmly across the same ground that had just swallowed his warrior. The human stopped at the edge of the morass and looked down at him. It was smaller than Vexnar had expected, its fragile-looking body covered in artificial protective layers against the cold. It carried no visible weapons, yet Vexnar felt more vulnerable than he had during the ambush. The human spoke, its primitive vocalizations incomprehensible to Vexnar's damaged translator. Then surprisingly, it reached out a limb toward him. An offer? A threat? With no alternatives, Vexnar extended his primary arm. The human grasped it and pulled, the ground suddenly solidifying enough to allow Vexnar to be extracted. As he stumbled onto solid ground, Vexnar's tactical programming urged him to strike, to eliminate this potential threat. But something stayed his hand. Curiosity, perhaps, or the growing realization that nothing about this invasion had proceeded according to any predictable pattern. The human turned and walked toward the structure, pausing once to look back, clearly expecting Vexnar to follow. With his ship destroyed, his army defeated, and the planet itself seemingly arrayed against him, Commander Vexnar of the Galatian Armada made the first truly independent decision of his rigidly programmed existence. He followed. The survivor. The human structure was primitive by Galatian standards, constructed of processed vegetation and mineral composites. Yet it remained standing while Vexnar's technologically superior flagship now lay in ruins somewhere across the planet. This contradiction was not lost on him as he ducked his towering frame through the inadequately sized entrance. Inside, warmth enveloped him immediately, partially reviving his cold, stunned systems. The human moved efficiently around the single room, activating various primitive heating and illumination devices. When it finally turned to face him, Vexnar could analyze its features more clearly. Female, according to his species identification protocols. Approximately middle-aged for her species. She wore functional clothing with multiple pockets containing tools and instruments. Not a warrior, but something else. A technician, perhaps, or a scientist. She spoke again, and this time, Vexnar's partially functioning translator managed to interpret fragments. Research station, monitoring environmental, knew you would come only survivor. With deliberate movements, she approached a primitive computational device and activated it. The screen displayed images that Vexnar recognized with shock: his invasion fleet in orbit, the dropships entering atmosphere, the battles across the planet's surface. She had been watching, perhaps even anticipating. The human retrieved a more sophisticated device from a secure container, one whose technology seemed incongruous with the primitive surroundings. She attached components to it, then approached Vexnar cautiously. "This will help us communicate," the translator suddenly rendered perfectly. "It's calibrated specifically for your species' neural patterns." Vexnar's secondary arms twitched in alarm. "How could you possibly have technology calibrated to Galatian neural patterns? We've never encountered your species before." The human's mouth formed what Vexnar's cultural database identified as a smile, though it contained no warmth. "You haven't encountered us, but we've encountered your kind before. Different names, different physical forms, but the same arrogance, the same certainty of superiority." She gestured to the computational device, which now displayed historical footage. Vexnar watched in disbelief as the screen showed another invasion, not by Galatians, but by the crystalline Arthaxians almost 300 cycles ago. Then another, by the gaseous collective consciousness known as the Mrit, and another, by a species even Vexnar didn't recognize, all encountering the same fate as his fleet. "My name is Dr. Eleanor Chen," the human said. "I'm a xenobiologist specializing in invasion ecology. You might say you're my field of study." "You're a scientist," Vexnar said, processing this revelation. "Yes, though that's an oversimplification. I'm part of Earth's biological defense network. We don't need massive military forces or advanced warships to protect our world. Earth protects itself, with just a little guidance from us." Vexnar's tactical mind raced through the implications: the environmental anomalies, the atmospheric changes, the ground transformed to trap us. These were deliberate? Dr. Chen moved to adjust some controls on a wall-mounted device. "In a manner of speaking, Earth's biosphere has evolved over billions of years into something unique in the galaxy, a planetary ecosystem with emergent intelligence properties. Not conscious in the way you or I are conscious, but aware, responsive, adaptive." "That's impossible," Vexnar insisted, though his own experiences of the past 12 hours suggested otherwise. "Once, long ago, it would have seemed impossible. To us too," she acknowledged. "But after the first few interstellar species attempted invasion, we began to understand. Earth doesn't just support life, it is life. In a sense, we're still working to comprehend. And it has very effective antibodies against invasive species." The implications staggered Vexnar. His military career had spanned over 70 cycles. He had conquered worlds whose defensive capabilities far exceeded Earth's apparent technological level. Yet none had presented the kind of resistance he'd encountered here. "What happened to my army?" he asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Dr. Chen's expression changed subtly. "Most were eliminated within the first 6 hours. The remainder are being processed." "Processed?" "Earth doesn't waste. Your organic components will be broken down and reintegrated into the biosphere. Your technology will be studied, analyzed, and eventually repurposed." She paused, studying his reaction. "The planet learns from each invasion, adapts, prepares for the next." Vexnar's tactical training finally reasserted itself. This human was isolated, possibly unarmed. Despite his damaged state, he could easily overpower her, use her as a hostage, perhaps find a way to signal for extraction. As if reading his thoughts, Dr. Chen calmly said, "I wouldn't recommend violence, Commander. This cabin looks isolated, but it's as much a part of Earth's defense system as the atmosphere or soil. The structure itself would respond." To demonstrate, she placed her hand on a wooden support beam. Immediately, The grain of the wood began to shift and flow beneath, her touch responsive to some unseen command. "Why am I still alive?" Vexnar finally asked the question that had been troubling him since his extraction from the forest floor. "Two reasons," Dr. Chen replied. "First, we need information. Your species is new to us. Your technology has unfamiliar elements. We need to understand your capabilities for future reference. And the second reason? To deliver a message." Her voice hardened. "You're going back, Commander Vexnar. Back to whatever hierarchical military structure sent you here. And you're going to tell them exactly what happened." Vexnar's secondary arms twitched with bitter amusement. "You expect me to return in defeat? To admit that a technologically inferior species bested the Galactian Armada? I would be executed immediately." "Perhaps," she conceded, "but your superiors would hear the truth first. And fear is a powerful deterrent." Before Vexnar could respond, a tremendous impact shook the structure. Dr. Chen rushed to the computational device, checking sensor readings with a frown. "One of your ships survived longer than expected," she muttered. "Crashed approximately 20 kilometers from here." Vexnar felt a surge of hope. Perhaps reinforcements? A rescue team? Dr. Chen seemed to sense his thoughts again. "Don't get excited. Commander, it's already being contained." But for the first time, Vexnar detected uncertainty in her voice. This crash, this variable, hadn't been anticipated. When a second impact rattled the cabin's windows, Dr. Chen made a quick decision. "We need to relocate. This position may be compromised." She gathered several devices into a carrying container, then gestured toward the door. "After you, Commander." Outside, the forest had transformed yet again. The dense vegetation that had blocked Vexnar's retreat earlier had reconfigured, creating a clear path leading away from the direction of the impacts. Dr. Chen urged him along. This path, her previously calm demeanor replaced by watchful tension. They had traveled approximately 3 kilometers when Vexnar's partially functioning scanner detected multiple signatures approaching rapidly from behind. Galactian signatures. "Your containment appears to have failed," he observed, unable to keep satisfaction from his voice. Dr. Chen didn't respond directly. Instead, she placed her hand against the trunk of a massive tree and closed her eyes in apparent concentration. The forest around them stirred, branches shifting position as if in response to her silent command. "There." She pointed to a dense thicket that hadn't been there moments before. "That will shield us from their scanners." As they concealed themselves, Vexnar considered his options. These approaching Galactians represented his only chance of escape, of returning to the fleet, if any ships remained in orbit. Yet something held him back from attempting to signal them. Curiosity. A commander's need to understand the enemy before engaging. The Galactian patrol emerged into view. 6 warriors in damaged exoskeletons, moving with the caution of hunted prey rather than conquerors. Their weapons were deployed, but their movements betrayed exhaustion and damage. "Your elite forces look less impressive now," Dr. Chen whispered. One warrior paused, adjusting a scanning device. Commander Vexnar's signature detected in this vicinity, it reported. Faint but present. "Alive?" Another warrior asked, surprise evident in its translated voice. "Uncertain. The signal is corrupted. Could be his neural implant functioning independently of biological processes." The patrol spread out, beginning a standard search pattern. As they did, Vexnar noticed something disturbing. The forest floor, beneath the warrior's feet, was subtly discolored, a darker shade of brown spreading outward from each footstep. Dr. Chen noticed his observation. "Enzymatic degradation," she explained quietly. "The soil is breaking down their exoskeletal components. On contact. Slow but cumulative, they won't survive another 12 hours in this environment." "You're going to let them die slowly?" Vexnar asked, surprised at the emotional response this generated within him. "It's not my decision," she replied. "It's Earth's immune response. I can influence it to some degree, but not override it entirely." One warrior suddenly staggered, dropping to one knee as its exoskeleton visibly began to deteriorate around the joints. The others moved to assist, unaware that the same process was affecting them, just more slowly. "This is barbaric," Vexnar found himself saying. Dr. Chen turned to him with genuine curiosity. "Is it more barbaric than your invasion protocols? What were your orders regarding Earth's indigenous population?" Vexnar didn't answer immediately. His orders had been clear: subjugate useful specimens for study and labor, eliminate the rest to make room for Galatian colonization. Standard extinction protocols used successfully on 17 worlds before this one. Complete replacement, he finally admitted. "As I thought," Dr. Chen nodded. "Yet you judge Earth's defense as barbaric. Interesting." Before their conversation could continue, one of the warrior's scanning devices emitted a high-pitched alert. "Commander's signature strengthening. He's alive and close." The patrol reoriented, moving directly toward their hiding place. Dr. Chen tensed, her hand reaching for a device in one of her many pockets. Vexnar made his decision. He emerged from concealment, towering over the human scientist and becoming fully visible to his warriors. "Hold position," he commanded, using his rank authority codes. The warriors froze, their weapons still raised but not firing. "Commander," the lead warrior acknowledged, "we believed you lost. A rescue vessel awaits at the crash site. We must hurry. This planet's environment is hostile beyond all projections." Vexnar turned to Dr. Chen, who watched him warily but made no move to flee or hide. "You said I would be allowed to return to deliver your message. Was that truth or manipulation?" "It was truth," she replied calmly. "Earth doesn't lie. It doesn't need to." With a deliberate motion, Vexnar activated his neural implant's recording function, documenting everything around him: the forest, the deteriorating warriors, the human scientist. "What exactly is the message you want delivered?" Dr. Chen stepped forward, unafraid despite being surrounded by Galatian warriors. "Earth is not a resource to be conquered. It is not a prize to be won. It is a living system that has evolved defenses against exactly the kind of threat your civilization represents. Today you experienced a measured response, a warning. Return in force and the response will not be measured." She paused, then added, "Earth has no interest in interstellar conquest. We don't seek to visit your worlds or impose our way of life. We simply wish to be left alone. Respect that wish and there will be peace between us." Vexnar considered her words, comparing them with everything he had witnessed since landing on this impossible world, a planet that defended itself, a species that had evolved alongside it, forming a symbiotic relationship so profound that the line between planetary processes and defensive strategy had blurred into something his tactical programs could barely comprehend. "Commander, we must evacuate immediately," the lead warrior insisted. "Our exoskeletons are failing. The rescue vessel cannot maintain position for long." Vexnar made the second truly independent decision of his existence. "You will return to the fleet," he ordered his warriors. "Deliver my neural recordings to the High Command, complete and unaltered. And you, Commander?" Vexnar looked at Dr. Chen, then back to his warriors. "I will remain to complete the assessment of this world's defensive capabilities. That data may prove crucial for future diplomatic considerations." The warriors hesitated, their hierarchical programming conflicting with the unusual order. Finally, the lead warrior nodded. "As you command." As the Galatian patrol departed, following a path that seemed to deliberately open before them through the previously impenetrable vegetation, Vexnar turned back to Dr. Chen. "Your world will not be threatened by my civilization again," he stated, with certainty. "The recordings will ensure that, but I suspect you knew this outcome was possible." Dr. Chen's expression softened slightly. "We've learned that in approximately 8% of invasion scenarios, meaningful communication can be established with at least one survivor. Usually a commander or specialist who possesses both the authority and cognitive flexibility to process what they've experienced." "And what happens to that survivor?" Vexnar asked. For the first time, Dr. Chen smiled genuinely. "That depends on the survivor, Commander. Earth has accepted your presence for now. Whether you choose to remain as an observer, a student, or eventually an ambassador is up to you. Vexnar looked up through gaps in the forest canopy at the sky where his fleet had once orbited in unstoppable might. Then down at the soil beneath his feet, soil that had transformed from weapon to pathway in response to some subtle communication between human and planet. "I believe I have much to learn," he said finally. As they walked back toward the research station, Vexnar noticed something he had missed before. The forest wasn't destroying everything in his path as it had during the invasion. Instead, it seemed to be adjusting around him, accommodating his presence while continuing its normal processes. Not attacking, simply responding. "The planet recognizes you now," Dr. Chen explained, noticing his observation. "You're no longer categorized as an invasive threat." "What am I categorized as?" She considered this for a moment. "A visitor, I suppose. Perhaps eventually. A symbiont, like us." Vexnar, once commander of the Galatian Armada, conquest veteran of 17 star systems, sole survivor of the Earth invasion, contemplated this new designation with surprising equanimity. Visitor. Student. Perhaps one day symbiont. For a species that had evolved in rigid hierarchies defined by conquest and dominance, these concepts represented something entirely new, something worth surviving to understand. The end.